next speaker today is Professor Sushma Yadav. Professor Sushma Yadav is the Professor of Public Policy and Governance at the Institute of Public Administration, New Delhi, that is IIPA. She is the former Pro-Vice Chancellor of Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi, and former Chair Professor Dr. Ambedkar Chair, IIPA. Presently, Professor Sushma Yadav is working on the philosophy of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar along with the issues of social justice with reference to good governance, human rights and empowerment of the depressed sections of the society, including women for inclusive growth and development. Professor Yadav introduced a module on social justice and Dr. Ambedkar in the premier program for civil servants, including advanced professional program in public administration for mid-level serving officers of Government of India. She has written a dozen books and has spoken on Dr. Ambedkar and social justice in New York, USA, Shanghai, Beijing in China, Santiago in Chile and Nepal, and Bangladesh, that is closer to India. Besides, in a number of universities and civil society organizations in India. She has been awarded the first Phule Ratna Award and Savitribai Phule Award and Jeevak Shikshak Award in recognition of her contribution towards creating an egalitarian society, and is presently the President, Indian Political Science Association, a 78-year-old pan-India body of political scientists. Please join your hand to welcome Professor Sushma Yadav.
The chair of the session, Dr. Julian Berger, head retired MRC, United Nations Human Rights Council, Geneva. My fellow panelists, Mr. Yogesh Varhade, the founder, President, Ambedkar Center for Justice and Peace. And I'm sorry, I think his time has been cut short, although I could have given 15 minutes more because he had a lot of international exposure and a lot of things to say here. I'm really sorry if you've been cut short. Venerable Buddhists who've come from different countries, the Buddhist monks who are carrying on the legacy of Gautam Buddha, the Lord here. Different colleagues from University of Mumbai, delegates, and Ambedkarite sisters and brothers. It's a great pleasure for me to be here at this international conference. It clearly shows Dr. Ambedkar has arrived on the center stage, and we are no longer on the margins only. If we can be here at the convention hall of University of Mumbai for an international conference, I think the idea of social justice, which Dr. Ambedkar espoused for, has come to the mind of the governments of different states of India, and also the government of India. The very presence of the Prime Minister at Mau yesterday, the birthplace of Babasaheb Ambedkar, which was neglected for long, gives a message. And I must share with you, it is for the first time in last 2 years. This year, the Prime Minister of India delivered the Ambedkar Memorial Lecture, which is an annual feature by Dr. Ambedkar Foundation. And last year, the President of India delivered the Ambedkar Memorial Lecture, which shows the priority which the government at the moment is giving to the spread of the ideas of Dr. Ambedkar, and we must all take advantage of it by espousing and spreading awareness about Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar. And I must compliment Government of Maharashtra and its Department of Social Justice and Special Assistance for organizing and convening this international conference and bringing us all together, and also celebrating this year as Year of Equity and Social Justice. I think India needed it. And I say it out of my experience as the Dr. Ambedkar Chair Professor. I can share with you, India and abroad, at many places I had gone, there has been so much ignorance about Dr. Ambedkar. People only knew 2 things about him. One, that he was the architect of the Constitution, and 2, that he gave the positive affirmation or the reservation program, which was reducing a very great illustrious man to a very small size. Because Baba Saheb Ambedkar came to these two places after a long struggle. It was struggle of years, which looked like years, but which were much more than years, because every year, I think for him was a century, because the way he studied Indian society, Indian philosophy, Indian religion, Indian culture, Indian economy, Indian sociology, Indian anthropology or anthropology about India, it's very, very rare phenomenon that a person can achieve as much in a lifetime. And therefore, when he came to the Constitution of India, it was with that background. And I think he came to the Constitution of India also because at that time, the dispensation feared because of his ideas on separate electorate. He had already given a huge concession to Indian National Congress and the national movement at that time by agreeing to have joint electorates. You can imagine what India would have been had there been separate electorates. We must always remember that. And also remember that reservation was only a very, very small part of the demand that Dr. Ambedkar had put before the leaders of the country at that time and even the British regime at that time. Therefore, the constitution which comes up, because I have gone through the Constituent Assembly debates in detail, and I can share with you, Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar had to work very hard in bringing his ideas to the Constitution. He was only presenting the drafts, and the drafts had ideas of all the people who were part of the Constituent Assembly at that time. And therefore, it was a very difficult task for him to bring what he brought into the Constitution, debating, arguing, writing, presenting, representing, and then redrafting. It was a very huge work. He spent nights without sleep, working throughout the nights in preparing this constitution. And that is why it is a constitution which is said to be the best constitution in the world, because it tried to give to all the citizens what other constitution could not give at one time. They gave in bits and pieces. Whichever constitution you take up, Indian constitution gives fundamental rights, directive principles, the language of the preamble, which tries to give equality, liberty, fraternity to all at one time. And it's not merely that, it also talks about dignity of the individual. And nowhere it talks about man, it talks about human beings, which means women are very much part of it. I think Dr. Ambedkar was a great visionary because he could think about the status of women at that time and the years to come. I have given this work because I had been speaking about his social justice much more, but social justice cannot be complete without women being part of it. And Dr. Ambedkar visualized it long back. If you have come across, otherwise he had his writings. When he was studying economics, he was also studying sociology and anthropology and law side by side. And all this understanding of Indian society gave him an idea how there was a downfall of Hindu women. He studied Hindu religion and then found that Hindu women at one time, he says in Smriti days, pre-Manu Smriti days, Hindu women had a much better life. They could study, they could have Upanayan Sanskar, they could decide, and they could also take decisions about their lives. But as the time changed, and even up to Kautilya times, if you read Kautilya, you find there are rights of women. They were being consulted in marriages, in property, at least they had some rights. But slowly and gradually, there came a stage when women lost all these rights and became subjugated. Dr. Ambedkar writes about them in his books, because he wrote treatises after understanding the Hindu society, The Rise and Fall of Hindu Woman, which gives a very clear picture. And you all, I think, must remember Dr. Ambedkar with purpose studied Sanskrit after a long time. He was denied study of Sanskrit in beginning, and he had to study Persian. But later on, with a purpose, he learnt Sanskrit and he read all these texts, which takes a lifetime for anybody. But he did study them. And then he wrote The Rise and Fall of Hindu Woman, The Hindu Woman and the Counter-Revolution, and The Riddle of Woman. And in these three treatises, before he came to the Constitution, he analyzed the position of Hindu women. And there he found how caste, the position of women, both coincide at one place. He explains that as caste became stringent and stronger, the position of women also became more and more subjugated. Because the purity of caste, or endogamy as he calls it, ultimately resulted in the fall of the status of women, because first it was purity of the race or the caste, and then they had to be kept subjugated, fearing that insecurity or security of race. And therefore he understood both of them together. And he wrote extensively about it and brought it out in his public speeches. He clearly explained that it is basically this endogamous nature of social structure which comes out of caste, where women also become part of a patriarchal structure. The feminists started talking about it much later. I think Dr. Ambedkar was a great feminist when he wrote about women and their status and brought it out very, very clearly how women get subjugated. First, it is keeping them safe, then keeping them aloof from the property so that the property doesn't get divided, and it remains intact with the family. So it becomes a widow. First it is sati, then it becomes forced widowhood, then it becomes no education, then it becomes no property, and then finally, if you have no education and no property, you have no rights to discuss, participate, and ultimately take decisions. This was the position when Dr. Ambedkar was analyzing the position of women, and he took caution that in the Constitution of India, all this must go away. But it was not merely the Constitution of India. He discussed about this in all his addresses also. He used to say in his writings, when he was talking about caste, he says caste in India means an artificial chopping off of the population into fixed and definite units. And these units prevented from fusing into another, which is clearly classified, and endogamy is the only characteristic that means creation of caste, and which is very, very particular to the caste. He discussed the gender discrimination in Manusmriti, which I am not going to go into details, because we all know what Manu had prescribed for women and how women became subjugated after that, and how a husband became almost a master and she became almost like a property. If you believe, or ultimately the society started believing in Manu's dictums and the bondage which comes to him for lifelong. Dr. Ambedkar's mission in life was to challenge all hierarchies. It was caste hierarchy, it was also gender. And he believed in equality, freedom for all. And equality and freedom couldn't have come without challenging this system which was there. And Dr. Ambedkar had started voicing his concern at that time. One of the solutions that he gave was make everyone aware of what is given in the Shastras and what is not just. The moment they start realizing, they will fight against it, they'll speak against it, and they will ultimately get rid of that. And he did that by bringing all these ills to the people. He also brought these issues out in his publishings and writings, in his magazines which he brought out. You all know that, Mook Naik and Bahishkrit Bharat. And it was in 1920s that he started about women's freedom, equality, and movement around that. He had invited a number of women started asserting their rights, he told them, you break the shackles which are around you, including the tali which you wear around your neck, because that's a symbol. No man wears it. So why should women only wear it? Because it becomes a symbol that you are identified as a property, as a person who is tied with this. So if men don't wear, you don't wear. And there was a moment where thousands of women came together and took a vow not to be bowed by this and not to be bowed by any evil customs. He championed the cause of women in the Bombay Legislative Council as well. And many of us knew later, and I think a majority of women even now don't know, that the maternity leave, which has come to us as a right in post-independent India or independent India, was basically a gift by Dr. Ambedkar. When he was moving the maternity benefit bill, it was pre-independence Bombay Legislative Council, he had said, it is in the interest of the nation that the mother ought to get a certain amount of rest during the prenatal period and also subsequently. And the principle of the maternity leave or maternity benefit bill is based entirely on that principle. That being so, when he was moving that bill, he said, I am bound to admit that the burden of this ought to be borne by the government. Because when a woman bears a child, it's not merely a child of hers or the couple's, it's a child for posterity and a child for the whole nation and society. And therefore, he argued that the conservation of people's welfare is a duty of the government, and bearing that duty in mind, the government must give this kind of amount of leave as well as rest. And in every country, he said, you will find that the government has been owing a certain amount of charge with regard to maternity benefit. This was a very, very revolutionary bill at that time, because till then, the working women in government services were not very many. We couldn't think at that time that this will come so handy, but all those who are now working in the government sector, in the organized sector, we understand the value of it, because now it can't be decreased, it can only be increased, and we must pay homage to Baba Saheb Ambedkar and remember him with gratitude for this. In January 1928, as early as that, a women's association was found under the leadership of his wife, Srimati Ramabai Ambedkar. And they started participating in all the movements. And it was then that there was a wing of women in Samta Sainik Dal also. So Dr. Ambedkar was encouraging women's participation in all the movements and in his struggle for the egalitarian society or just society and social justice. When he addressed the Depressed Classes Women's Conference, which he had created at that time, there also he said, I am a great believer in women's organizations because they can do a lot to improve the condition of society if they are convinced, but they need to be convinced before. In the women, there lies the responsibility of eradicating social evils. He also underlined that women should learn to be clean. He used to say, wear nice clothes, cover yourself well, be educated and educate your children. This is how you can change the lives, your lives and the lives of coming generation. And it was these ideas which ultimately he brought into the Constitution of India in the preamble, in the fundamental rights, because all fundamental rights given in the Constitution of India, Article 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, talk about all Indian citizens. It's not about men and women. So women, they are all rights given irrespective of differences of caste, race, creed, etc. This is how he brought women into the mainstream of at least the constitutional empowerment. And that was a very great contribution. You all know in various democratic countries of the world which are known as great democracies now, they had to fight a long battle for even getting the right to suffrage as far as women are concerned. But in India, all of us got this right with the Constitution, which is a great legacy of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar. As the first law minister of independent in India, Dr. Ambedkar introduced the Hindu Code Bill. And what we are doing now, after 60 years, all these were given in that Hindu Code Bill, that women will have a right to divorce, that there will be a monogamy, that the women will have a right to inherit property, that the women will also have a say in adoption of children, that women will have a right to maintenance. Had it been there at that time, which couldn't be passed at that time, had it been there, the status of women would have been drastically changed or revolutionarily changed by now. It's, I think, a day to remember what Baba Saheb Ambedkar had done to women. What remains to be done is that directive principles of state policy, the fundamental duties which came later, which have many more provisions. We have equal pay for equal work in the organized sector, but in the unorganized sector, that is yet to be given because women have a very hard time working there. And so I think a conference like this and a group like this must think what can be done beyond this. And I would be failing in my duty if I do not come to that. Because women's empowerment, like human empowerment, like social empowerment, has many more dimensions. Rights are one part, entitlements is one. Empowerment has many more dimensions: social, political, economic, educational, cultural, and spiritual. I think until all these dimensions are not taken care of, empowerment really does not mean anything. So what we have to do is, we have to carry on with Baba Saheb's legacy. The rights that he had given, we are realizing now. He wanted the right to education at that time, the right to primary education, during the Constituent Assembly debates. And you can imagine the picture of India and Indian society would have been changed had it become a fundamental right at the time of independence. All the issues which are now emerging would have become almost like known issues, because now we are starting after 60 years, and there have been all kinds of logic when the positions were lying vacant, which were reserved positions, because the right to education at the lowest level was not given. Therefore, I think this 125th Jayanti is a time when we must look back and perform our duties. Have we been able to make people aware of these rights? Because the fundamental rights given in the Constitution have no meaning unless and until we know them and we can exercise them. And in India, largely people do not know about them. I had conducted a survey of human rights and women in India, and especially the marginalized women. I went to country around. I talked to the people working on the street, working in the homes, working in the fields, and the women just smiled nonchalantly. They didn't understand when I said, do you know what your rights are? Do you know what your human rights are? So I think this year should be a year where we must all work hard to make these human rights a reality. Because a right given in the Constitution does not mean much. Baba Saheb Ambedkar was revolutionary, could analyze and see beyond 50 years, 100 years. But all of us must make it our duty, bounden duty, that we take it around and make the women of this country and all the marginalized who have yet not been able to claim their rights as the rights of the citizens of India. Then only India would become what Dr. Ambedkar depicted in the preamble, a nation where we the people of India mean something, where we the people have the right and we the people also include women. I would thank the Department of Social Justice and Special Assistance, Government of Maharashtra, for organizing it, and I thank all of you for being here, but I must implore, I pay my respectful homage to the memory of Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar, but all of us must take his struggle beyond what he said in the Constitution, because he could write in the Constitution minimal words. The struggle is much more than it is written. If all of us understand that what Dr. Baba Saheb Ambedkar gave in the Constitution, if all of us understand that that needs to be a reality, what he said to women at that time, and that was a double jeopardy, to women, what I didn't caught at that time, he said, stop accepting the unjust orders and advices. Refuse to give food to your husband and son if he comes drunk. If we start doing that and give the best education to your children, irrespective of sex, if we start doing that, I think the picture of India at this time and the society at large will change. So my brothers, I'll say, please respect what Dr. Ambedkar said. And to my sisters here, I say, please do what Dr. Ambedkar said, and it will be a different India altogether. Thank you very much.